Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Laura Rankhorn.
And I am Kim Crumbly. And together we make up Counselor Accents. And as you said, we have a model on. Goodness gracious.
We do.
Southern Sister.
We have Lauren Sisler with us, and that name may sound familiar because she is a two-time national award-winning sports broadcaster who joined ESPN and the SEC network in 2016 as a sideline reporter for both college football, which I'm very jealous of because that's kind of like my dream job, but we can talk about that later, and for gymnastics. And in addition, she serves as a sports reporter and host at AL.com, where she covers a multitude of teams and sports in the state of Alabama. She is a native of Roanoke, Virginia, and she was the captain of her gymnastics team at Rutgers University and graduated in 2006 with a communications degree. Lauren, welcome to the Counselor Accents Podcast.
Yes, thank you, Laura and Kim. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, sharing in this wonderful opportunity. And I know the weather here in Alabama is not too exciting right now. I know a lot of people are ready for spring. If you're like me, I'm ready for spring, but hopefully everybody's safe and hunkered down. And it'll be here before we know it.
Yeah,
and that's why we said we love Southern folks who say words like hunker, because we're expecting probably an ice storm. And we've not had an ice storm in a decade, so we're all kind of wondering what's going to happen. But we're all snug in our homes, and so happy to talk to you and hear your story, Lauren. For those folks who have not heard it, they are in for just a gut-wrenching experience. But I tell you, what you're doing is so very important, and it touches everyone somehow. I believe everyone can find that connection for what you're going to talk about today.
And Kim, it sounds like you're wanting to jump right into her story, but I'm
excited.
Okay.
I don't want to do it, but I am excited to.
Because I want to do a little, I want to unpack a few things before we get into that, if I may. First of all, Lauren, I heard that you are a tall person. You are 5'9", is that correct?
5'9". Obviously, I'm sitting down right now, but yes, 5'9" is my current height.
Okay.
Which, as you read in my bio, a former gymnast, much taller than most gymnasts, and so I kind of missed my mark a little bit there on the height. When you're growing up, mom and dad mark you on the wall or whatever, and I guess I just kept on growing, and it's kind of crazy because females tend to stop growing much sooner than males, right? And especially as an athlete, I thought my growth spurt was done, 13, 14, 15, like I'm slowing down. I get to college and I just keep growing. Like, what the heck? Why do I keep growing? So that's just the way it goes. I did not expect that I would be 5'9", but that's where the good Lord landed me, and now I'm just a has-been, a former gymnast has-been, but thankful for the opportunities that gymnastics gave me in my glory days.
Well, not to make this about myself, but I was really excited because I feel like I am also very tall. I'm 5'10", and I feel like I can now fulfill a lifelong dream. I can now start gymnastics. I can go practice gymnastics during the week. And now, like, maybe I could live out this dream too.
I mean, now I will say there is also like an age thing on there. I joke with people about this, and I'm not saying you're old, Laura, but what I will say is, in the sport of gymnastics, I mean, most gymnasts peak around 12, 13 years old. And then it's kind of like, you kind of get to the top of the mountain and it's like a descent, right?
Yes.
I joke about this often, but there's no such thing as like a pickup game of gymnastics. Like you can't just go in the backyard, after you're old and retired from gymnastics and just go out there and, pretend like you know what you're doing. It's tough on the body. I can still go to the trampoline park or backyard trampoline and turn a few flips and stuff, but it's a little risky. Let's just say that.
So you're saying, Kim, don't join me. Is that what you're saying? That's a warning to you, Kim.
Exactly. Well, there's something too about when you reach a certain age, Laura, and you're YouTubing or you're TikToking, your black backflips. It just looks a little creepy at some point. It's just like somebody wants to do that. But yeah. So I'm talking to two tall, very tall. When I'm with Laura, it's like we're like this. I'm having to look up at her.
Lauren, I want to explore this with you for a minute. Are you aware of how tall you are?
Well, yeah. I mean, for the most part, I feel like I have a pretty good awareness about it, especially when I am out reporting and covering athletes. It's funny because I'm in some arenas where I'm still like very short, compared to some of the taller athletes. But it's crazy. I go and cover gymnastics and I'm like towering over those girls. So it's always so funny to kind of change positions, where one minute I'm like looking up, putting the mic up way high. And then there's other minutes where I'm like, hey, way down here. So, but being taller in this industry has definitely been beneficial in a lot of ways. So at least I can kind of hold my own, especially when I get out there when the people are storming the field and I've got to defend myself so I don't get trampled.
True.
Laura has no sense of how tall she is. None. Like she thinks we're the same height. And she just, it's like what do you say? You're like a great.
I say I'm like a Great Dane. You know how the Great Dane dogs are so big, but they'll see a Chihuahua and they'll curl up in their tiny little bed like, oh, I'm that size too.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So
yeah.
I say I'm like a Great Dane. Kim, however, is very small in stature, but she thinks that she can command a room. Let me put it that way.
That is so funny. So yeah,
that's good. Hey, a lot of great things come in small packages. It's okay, y'all.
That's what I like to hear. That's right, what I like to hear. But yeah, I do envy both of your heights and know that I know how Laura looks when she enters the room. She's so everybody looks at because she's so tall. Everybody's looking at her, and I'm going, Dad, gum.
And I have said Kim will fake a fall when we enter a room just to get more attention on herself. So
if I need to.
That's funny.
There. Well, I just needed to unpack that with someone. I wanted to explore my feelings and thoughts with someone who is also tall. So thank you for indulging me.
Got to get that out of the way, y'all. Got to get it out of the way. Sorry, Kim.
Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking. So you went to the university on a scholarship for gymnastics, correct?
Yes. Yep. It's interesting too because Rutgers was never really on my radar. I didn't really know anything about Rutgers, like where it was at. And one of my other teammates growing up had actually been recruited by them as well. She didn't end up going there, but she had been recruited. So it's kind of how it fell on my radar, and they expressed interest. And so, as I was looking at different schools around, the East Coast mostly, UNC, NC State, I think West Virginia was on the list, Air Force Academy. But then Rutgers had me come for an official visit, and I felt like it was a good fit and was excited to join the team and become a Scarlet Knight. So I tell people in the state of Alabama, I am not wearing crimson, I am wearing scarlet. So I got to make sure people know the difference, that I support my Scarlet Knights through and through.
You have to be careful. You've been in Alabama long enough to know you've got to be careful when you're sports talking.
That is true. That is a hot button here.
Uh-huh.
And
that's exactly right.
I'm a Tennessee fan, so I was going to put in for the Tennessee coach job because I felt like here on this most recent coach switch, I had a very good shot. I didn't think many people would apply for that job. So, but I decided to keep my day job as a school counselor.
You would have made a great head football coach there.
I could
definitely, definitely. Rocky Top has had a little bit of a tumultuous run as of late, but hopefully things are on the up and up. I know Coach Heupel and covering him at UCF, who now Gus Malzahn took that job, which is pretty cool too. So happy for the Malzahns. I think that's a great landing spot for him. And then I think Coach Hype will do some good things at Tennessee. I know there's, some concern or some skepticism, but hey, you got to give him a shot and hopefully he can get things turned around.
I will say what I've said since 1998. This is our year. This is our year.
There you go.
Laura's from Tennessee.
I am.
So I have to hear, her Rocky Top song more than I want to hear. So
I mean, I'll do it now, or we can keep going with Lauren's story.
No, I'm going to ask you to not do it now. I'm going to ask you to not sing Rocky Top right now.
I don't have my clogging shoes on, so it wouldn't feel right. So
yeah, you got to have the accessories to go with it, or else it does not count.
Right.
Waste of time.
We're looking at you, Lauren, and for those listening, but they've probably saw you on sports casting, but you're gorgeous. You're just and listening to what you've accomplished, and you would look at you and say, she's got everything, she's got it all, and that's not always necessary. You have become who you are through some tragedy.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's one thing that is always unique and interesting about every single individual, that behind whatever you see on the outside, everyone is going through something. Everyone has a story. And, I'll never forget one time I actually walked into a school and spoke to a group of students, 9th and 10th graders. This was the week of, I think it was prom week. And so they were, the school had me come in and just talk about good decision making. And I remember afterwards, a girl came up to me and said, hey, do you ever go and speak to students and ever feel like your message resonates or doesn't resonate with them? And I said, absolutely. Like every time, I go somewhere and I want to share my story and I want to share my heart, but not everyone necessarily is going to pick up on it. And she said, well, I just want you to know that when you walked in this room, I just looked at you and said, well, what the heck does this girl know about me? This tall, blonde sports reporter, how is she going to help me in my life right now? And she said that it's so amazing because she felt like I was able to kind of empathize and put people in my shoes and put myself in their shoes, because everyone's always going through something. We're trying to figure ourselves out. And especially in middle school and into high school, kind of going through those awkward years. I say awkward because there's just so many decisions to make, and just figuring yourself out, figuring out who you want to be, figuring out that identity. We're all having an identity crisis. And I'll tell you one thing, that when you think that you're just going to graduate from high school and suddenly your identity crisis is just going to go away, that is not the case. And it's a process for anybody and everybody. And now I'm well into my 30s, and I'm still trying to figure out who I am and who I want to be and how I want to live my life on purpose. And that's just something I want to encourage anyone that's listening. That you will always be trying to figure out that process, but the best thing that you can do is to embrace yourself through that process. Everything. Embrace the good with the bad, because there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of challenges, and no challenge too big or small. We're all going through stuff. We're all trying to, keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, trying to, win over social media. And a lot of things that we think matter now, and especially in that age group, because by the way, in theory, I'm sort of on the edge of being millennial, on the edge, shifting out of that range. But all that to say is I think we put so much emphasis and focus on what everyone else is doing. How do I compare to this person? How do I compare to this person? But when you pick up that cell phone and you put on social media and you scroll through somebody's timeline, you're seeing a millisecond of someone's life. And so it's so easy, Kim, like you said, to just assume that person that you're looking at has never experienced a bad day in their life or has everything given to them. And, based on the car they drive or the job they have or the house they live in. But we are all shaped by our experiences. We are all shaped by the things in our lives that happen. And again, nothing too big or too small. those are all little pieces that tell our story. And I think it's so important to embrace our stories. And that, as we get into my story, is sort of where I've landed today with embracing my story, because I feel like it is so important to love who you are and to, embrace all of you, because that is the only way that you can continue to move forward and have a positive outlook on life and be an impact for other people, and to be a positive impact and share a light and shine a light on other people and help people through the challenges that they're going through. Because look, we're all going through challenges, and none of us are exempt from life's difficult circumstances.
So well said. Like, I feel like we could just, that was perfect. But you have so much more to share. So let's get into your story. Why don't you start wherever you feel the most comfortable in sharing your story?
All right, I will do that. So yeah, let me just kind of take you back to the beginning. So, just trying to illustrate sort of the home life. I grew up in what I felt was a very loving home. I've had two parents that loved my brother and I unconditionally. They were very much a part of our lives, taking us to and from practices every day. My brother was a 3-sport athlete. We loved sports. My dad was always on the sidelines as a volunteer coach. I'd be down swinging on the monkey bars while my brother's out there playing football. And, we were a very close-knit family, and we did a lot of things together as a family. Sat at the dinner table, had home cooked meals for my mom. And, again, here I am painting this picture of what I saw as that picture perfect family. This was from my lens, how I envisioned my family. But, like every other family, we were far from perfect. And, there are things that happen that you're not necessarily privy to, especially when you're younger. You don't understand what certain things mean. You don't understand some of the challenges that maybe our parents or loved ones are going through. And, so while I perceived my life in my childhood growing up to be wonderful, there were challenges and there were things that I was not privy to. And so, as I continued on throughout my gymnastics career, as I said, I had my sights set on a college scholarship. And so when I earned that college scholarship, I just felt so proud, because I knew that I had made my parents proud. I'd worked so hard for that. And finally I was able to kind of, take ownership of that and say, wow, I've worked so hard for this. And now I can give back to them the money and the time that they spent to give me all the resources I needed to be successful in the sport of gymnastics. And then of course with my academics. So, very fortunate and thankful for that. So as, I signed that letter of intent and went off to college, it was a proud moment for myself and my family. And, when I went to Rutgers, it was 8 hours from home, and I still had a very close relationship with my parents. I still talk to my parents every single day. Bottom line is, I tell this to people, and, I guess looking back on it's not something I guess you hear often, but, I actually, up until the day that I graduated high school, I was 17 years old when I graduated high school and moved into college. My parents would tuck me in every night. Usually it was my mom and my dad, or my dad would come tuck me in and we would say our prayers at night. And I was 17 years old, still telling my dad, get up here, come tuck me in. We got to say our prayers. And that was just the relationship I had with my parents. And I felt fortunate for it, fortunate to have them and have their love and support, because now looking back, I realize that not everybody necessarily has that, or, maybe their family life or home dynamic might be different. But again, while that was the perception I had, everything was far from perfect. And there were a lot of things happening behind closed doors that I, myself, and my older brother, Alan, had no clue was going on. And we would later find these things out. At Rutgers, my second semester, I'm studying for exams, and I picked up the phone like I always did, called my parents, had a conversation about gymnastics, had a conversation about school, talked to my mom, talked to my dad. We said our I love yous and our goodbyes, and that was it. And nothing seemed out of the ordinary until that night. Really the next morning, I get a call from my father just after 3:00, and he said, Lauren, your mom died. And I was just so shocked. I said, what do you mean? I just talked to mom. It's the middle of the night. What could have possibly happened? Dad, please tell me what happened. And he said, Lauren, I can't explain it now. Just get on the next plane you can, and I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And unfortunately, he never did show up that day to pick me up at the airport. And it was my uncle and my cousin who had to deliver the bad news that my dad too had passed away. And I just remember being left in such shock and just despair. And how am I going to live my life without my two best friends, the two people that I love the most? I don't know how I'm going to continue to move forward. And it was like I was living this out of body, out of reality experience. I just could not believe that this was actually happening. How and why is this happening to me? How and why is this happening to my family? And so it would be days and months that we would ask that question, what happened, what happened, what happened? And we would finally find out that both of my parents had passed away from prescription drug overdoses. They were going to a pain management doctor in Roanoke, Virginia, and they both had chronic pain. My mom had degenerative disc disease that required multiple surgeries. My father had chronic back pain, also some depression, PTSD from his service in the military. And, they wwere going to a doctor. They were being prescribed medication. This is what they were being told to do to make them feel better every day. So we as a family knew that they were in pain, but we didn't know the severity of it. We didn't know how significant that pain was. And we did not know and or see the transition from the chronic pain to the addiction pain. And when they started to abuse that medication and became very reliant on that to get out of bed in the morning. So, my father was worked full time at the VA medical center. And, my mom was on partial disability because of her pain, but she used to come to the gym and, answer phones and do books. And, she was always very active in that. We went to church on Sundays. We were part of the community. We did community events. And, my parents were outgoing people. They loved being around other people and surrounding themselves by other people. And it's just crazy to later learn that through all of this, they were actually struggling. They were drowning in their addiction. They were battling this addiction. And I think that's the one thing I want people to see is that addiction comes in so many different shapes and sizes, and it can be right there in front of you, but hidden. And my parents were fighting a concealed battle with addiction. And I truly believe that they were fighting that concealed battle because they were ashamed to share what they were going through. They were ashamed of how they would be judged. They were fearful that they would be judged by others and that maybe they would be viewed differently. And so, we grow up with this perception of what addiction looks like. We're told in school what addiction looks like and don't do drugs and don't do this and don't do that. But when a doctor's prescribing it, you think, well, that's okay, right? But in this process, I've learned that addiction can look so many different ways. And truth be told, my parents are no different than, perhaps the homeless person that fell into this same battle with addiction and is fighting for his life, fighting to stay alive, fighting to feed himself. Everyone has a story and everyone gets there in some way. And I think it's just so important for people to be educated and know what addiction is, what it looks like, and, signs and symptoms, precursors to addiction, because people fall into this trap and oftentimes it can be too late. So I think education and prevention is key, but also there's hope and recovery. And I will tell you that hope truly comes from transparency and vulnerability. And I never discovered that until I was transparent and vulnerable enough to say, this happened to my parents. This is how they died. I'm not going to sugarcoat this anymore. I'm not going to tell this story just to appeal to everyone, because I felt like my parents' legacy was bound in my hands. And so I told this sugar-coated story over and over and over because I didn't want to be judged. My teammates, my best friends, my coaches, everyone at Rutgers, what happened? And they were led to believe, based on my storytelling and based on what I told them, is that both of my parents, they knew they were struggling with pain, but mom died of respiratory failure. Dad died of a heart attack, because that sounded so much better than they died of addiction. And it wasn't until years later that I started to realize that I can't keep running from reality. I can't keep running from the truth. And so as I exposed the truth first and foremost to myself, then to others, I realized this weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I felt like these shackles of shame had finally been undone, and that I could use their story to help others in whatever struggles they may be going through and whatever shame they may be feeling.
Such a powerful, powerful story. And I'm just sitting, as I'm listening to you, Lauren, you're right. This is not stereotypical. I mean, it's just not what we as school counselors often portray during Red Ribbon Week when we're talking about drug addiction. It's everywhere. And for you to come forward and to break that silence, and because I can see how I would want to protect my parents. You know, I love my parents very much. I can see how I'd want to protect them, and I know you did. But then, you know, what a great advocacy that, you know, just reaching out to others and saying this happened to me. And, you know, if it happened, you know, we're thinking if it's happening to you, it could happen to, you know, it could happen to us. It could happen to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just the key, is that it can happen to anyone. And, you know, my goal and my hope through this outreach and this process, you know, here's the first thing I'll say to anyone that's listening. You know, I was fortunate that I had a great support network. And, you know, several people had come to me and said, you know, if my parents passed, I don't know who would, you know, take care of me. Right. And so, you know, I was fortunate I had an aunt and uncle, but I was 18 at the time. So as far as, you know, legal guardianship was not necessary. You know, I was on my own. But, you know, what's crazy about it is that I'm 18 years old when they pass away. And I didn't even know how to write a check at the time. I had not prepared myself for adult life. And, you know, a lot of kids aren't prepared for that because they have that expectation that mom and dad are going to be there, or their loved ones, caretakers, whomever it may be, is going to be there to help them to make those decisions and to kind of go through life step by step. And so my focus was always schoolwork and gymnastics, school and gymnastics, AB honor roll student, keep the grades up, you know, keep performing well in gymnastics. And, you know, that was the routine. And so I wasn't necessarily equipped to be an adult like most 18-year-olds are not equipped to be adults. You know, that stuff comes with time and obviously experience. And so, you know, I really had to grow up quick and figure out life. But here's the thing. One thing moving forward, after my parents passed away, 2 weeks after laying them to rest, I went back to Rutgers. And, you know, I look back at that now and think, oh my gosh, you know, there was a moment in time, well, many moments in time after my parents had passed that I was ready to just kind of throw in the towel and say, I'm done. Like, I'm not going back to school. Like, I need a break. I need a break from life. I need a break from all this. But the thing is, there is no break. Like, you don't get a break. And I had to make a decision to go back to school. And fortunately, my aunt and uncle, who my mom's sister, my auntie Linda is what I call her. You know, she said, Lauren, you can't stay here. Like, you can't stay at home. You've got to go back to school. You have a commitment to yourself, your university, your teammates, your coaches. You have to go back to school. And this is what your parents would want. And so I made that decision. I said, okay, you know, I'm going to pack my bags. I'm going back to school. And looking back, it was the best decision I could have made, and the best decision that my family could have helped me to make. To not stop in my tracks, because I knew I had to keep moving forward. But it was tough. I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. I went back to school. I'm an AB honor roll student. I'm making C's and D's. I've never made an F on a paper in my entire life. And all of a sudden I'm just like, I am flunking. And not to mention, you fail out of school, you lose your scholarship, you don't get a diploma, where's your career? Everything was just blowing up right in front of me. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so this went on for about a year or so after my parents had passed. And, you know, quite frankly, there were those moments of, let's have a pity party for Lauren, you know, like, this happened to me, and this is just my life, and this is the way things are going to be. And, you know, there were many times I felt sorry for myself and just thought like, okay, you know, I'll just get by. But that's the thing. You know, as I continue on this path, I start to see like, nobody else can do this for me. And I had been knocked down. I had been knocked down and dragged through the mud, and realized that I have to take the first step. I have to be able to stand up and take that first step. And truthfully, it was my coaches and my teammates, my academic advisors, counselors. It was all the resources that I had around me that sort of reignited that trust in myself through that process. And it was tough love. And that's one thing that I think sometimes people don't recognize or realize, is that, you're going to have a lot of students, you're going to have people that go through tough times, and you got to love them through it. You got to love them wholeheartedly through it. But sometimes it comes with tough love, and it's that encouragement of saying, hey, look, you've got this. I think I had dropped down to maybe a 2.2, 2.3 GPA. And I was once a 3.5. I mean, in high school, just below a 4.0. And they said, this is unacceptable. And so instead of people being like, oh, we feel sorry for her because her parents passed away, it was, no, you are going to get up. You are going to do the work. We are going to give you all the resources you need to get it done. You have no excuse to fail. No excuse to fail. So to me, that was the best thing that could happen, because instead of just kind of passing me through and just saying, okay, we're just going to get her through this, I felt like I truly was given the resources and really the tough love that was needed to say, you're going to pick yourself back up and keep moving forward, and we're going to be here and we're going to carry you along the way. But I had to make that commitment to myself first. And so, I think it's just so important that you realize as a leader and as a career developer and as a, personal development coach that you are, as a counselor, as a teacher, you have to be, you have to take responsibility and accountability as well. What happens a lot of times when these kids go home, obviously you can't always control those environments, but what you can do for them while they're in school, and really just to reiterate them, give them that love. Maybe they're not feeling that love at home, or, maybe they are kind of just getting that hall pass, like, oh, you got a C today, like, that's fine. No, you can do better. You can do better. I'm going to love you through this. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to, condemn you, but I'm also not going to condone a C. You can do better. And so I think that's where you kind of have to find that balance and realize that you have an opportunity to really influence these kids, especially at this age. So when they do go off to college and then they graduate and they get into their careers, that they've experienced that tough love and realize, like, you're not going to be handed everything in life, and it's going to take a lot of hard work and determination, and it's going to take a lot of failures before you find that success, but that's okay. And that's all about who we are and how we're shaped. And that's part of our story.
I was thinking as you were talking, what you said about how you were an A, B student, and then you started making C's and D's and F's. We see that all the time, that students experience trauma of some sort, and then all of a sudden their teachers are saying, we don't know what's happened. They were a straight A student, and now we're seeing C's and D's. And what I'm hearing from you is that they use the tough love approach, but I'll bet that your coaches and all these people, your advisors, I'll bet they had made a deposit of love to where you trusted them on the front end so that they could do this tough love portion on the back end to bring you up to where you are. And I think that's important too, to know these relationships. This is why relationships are important in the school.
Absolutely. And I love the way you phrase that, the deposit of love, because it was love. And I knew when I went to Rutgers, I had that support, that full support from everyone around me. And, I also knew that when I picked myself up, like, I'm part of a team now. There's a lot of people that I don't want to let down. So it's not only just letting myself down, it's letting those around me down. And so I think that people have to realize that even if you're not an athlete, you're not part of a team per se, you have a team around you, your family, your loved ones, your friends, your counselors, your teachers. Like, we're all a team here, and we want everyone to succeed. We want everyone, if we could have an A+ rating through everything, like, that would be the ultimate goal. So we want to see everyone succeed. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there with, that sort of opening that doorway to love and that engagement, and realizing, like, this is unconditional love, that, yeah, you're going to get disciplined. You're going to, get fussed at if you do the wrong things. There will be consequences if you make poor decisions, but also know that there are people there that love you and want to see you succeed. And so you open up those conversations. And I think that's what's so important too, is to have these conversations and to be able to know that, hey, if my student is struggling with something, or even struggling with something at home, that they can come to you in confidentiality and in full transparency and say, hey, I'm going through this thing. I need help. and I don't want to be judged for it. And I don't know how to go through this. And I need someone to help me go through this. I need someone by my side to help me go through this. What can I do? And I think that that's where relationships are so key, because those relationships do create transparency and vulnerability that you can otherwise not get. Unlocking that can sometimes be an extremely difficult challenge. And it depends on the person, the personality, the trauma, as you mentioned, Laura. But I think that that is a big key component to not only just what they're learning in the classroom day in and day out, and what they're learning in terms of curriculum, but also those life skills and the ability to communicate when things are good, but also to communicate when things are bad, and to be okay with things when things are not going okay, and to figure out, okay, how do I get through this, and how do I build up my strength so then the next time I can get through this and know what to do, and to know who to turn to for help.
I want to say that I've always said that prescription drugs, that is something you can avoid every addiction pitfall your whole life. You can know that you have a genetic predisposition for alcoholism or something like that. And then prescription drugs, like you said, you go to a doctor and it feels safe because a doctor has prescribed it. And so I can't imagine what your life must have seemed like after everything happened and you looked back. How did you feel about everything before, like your life before, after you learned about your parents?
I mean, I think that the hardest, first of all, you do realize that nobody is perfect and nobody is exempt from life's difficult circumstances. And even though we thought everything was picture perfect, my dad struggled with alcoholism growing up. But as a child, I was able to compartmentalize it. My mom did a good job of helping us compartmentalize it. Oh, go back to your AA meetings. I'd hear them talking in the other room. Okay, like AA meetings, like I guess that has something to do with alcohol. But in my mind, it was like, oh, he's fine. It's not an illness. I didn't see it as an illness. I didn't see it as a problem. He would go to meetings, things would be fine for 6 months, and then he might relapse again. But I was conditioned to compartmentalize it, to forgive and forget, forgive and forget, forgive and forget. And I think that's where the educational piece comes in, and where I would have been better suited to be educated, because I was what I consider to be one of the lucky ones. When I was 15 years old, I made the decision, I'm not going to drink and do drugs. I was around it. I saw it. I was exposed to it. I was not sheltered from it by any means, but I made that choice because for me, my focus was schoolwork and gymnastics. And even when I got off to college and after things happened with my parents, and, coping mechanisms, as we know, a lot of times can be drugs and alcohol, I chose not to go down that path. And I'm so thankful for that. But that is not everyone's choice. And, people explore, they get curious, they want to know what this thing's all about. But I think that's where my perception has really changed, not only obviously with age and maturity, but experience and knowing that I wish I would have known more. I wish I would have known what my parents were going through, and to better understand that, just because a doctor prescribes it doesn't mean it's okay. And we have to be our own advocates, right? We have to advocate for ourselves. So when we go to a doctor's office, like when we ask questions, it can't just be like, ooh, let me write a script. Like, you got to ask questions. You got to know the right questions to ask. You got to know your body. You have to know, like you said, genetic predisposition is a huge one. Is it safe for me to take this? What are the side effects? Is this something that can be addictive? How long do you plan on having me on this? Are there alternatives? And ultimately to, take inventory of yourself. How does it affect your emotions? Does it put you in a downward spiral of depression? Does it, lift you up and get you really anxious and high? There's so many different things and factors to look at, but it's taking inventory of our own health. And those are things I wish I would have known. So looking back, when I think about everything that happened and everything that transpired in this process, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew as much as I needed to know. Mm-hmm. And it isn't until after the fact that we realize, wow, we need to do a better job of providing the same vital information to everyone. And sometimes I think that, and I imagine you guys deal with this a lot because you deal with a lot of different personalities, and there are people that are going to listen and they're going to perk up when you have a conversation with them. And then there's people that it feels like you're talking to a brick wall, but you have to have those conversations. And I think that engagement, and ultimately, don't just assume people know. Don't just assume people know. Don't do that. That's no good for you. Don't just assume that people have an understanding, because I can assure you that based on what I went through as a child, and now if I had not experienced the loss with my parents, I might still be walking through life just oblivious, like, oh, life is great, life is grand. I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. I've always been someone that just sort of looks at something and, that glass half full kind of saying. I'm more of like, oh, the water's dang pouring over the sides always. Like my scale of good, great, and wonderful is like wonderful is at the very left side, and then like spectacular, is on the right side. Like that's just my personality, and I've always been that way. And I'm very hard pressed to throw in a lot of negative emotions. So all that to say, as I go off on a tangent here, I think that you really just have to take care of things and address things the sooner, and keep reiterating it, and don't think that, that what you're saying and doing is not helping. Because like I said, when that girl walked up to me, I was exactly what she envisioned when I walked in that room and said to me, you're some tall sports reporter, like, nothing about me. But then I pretty much shared my message and shared my heart and opened up to her. And suddenly she's like, I can relate to that. And so you got to relate to everyone. You got to relate to people, and you just got to let them know, like, it's okay. Yeah. Like, it's okay. You're going to go through these things. I want to be here for you, and I'm going to lift you up, and I'm going to help you through this. You just have to give me permission. I'm here for you.
One of my favorite sayings, and I thought about this when I heard your story, was we lead people through our strengths, but we connect to people through our weaknesses. And I think that is like what you're doing through this, that's something that you wanted to keep hidden. And you said it so beautifully yourself that, you were bound by the shackle of privacy. You thought that was where your freedom was, and not telling your story. But when you decided to tell your story, that's when you found freedom. And I just think you put that so beautifully. And when you do share this vulnerable spot in your life, you are making these connections, because I think so many more people identify with that than we realize.
Can relate.
Authenticity is key, y'all.
Yes.
And that's one thing, you're not going to get on someone's Instagram feed and see the lowlights of someone's life, but you have to know that you're seeing 1 millisecond of someone's life, and they're showing you what they want you to see, only what they want you to see. They're not peeling back the layers and seeing the true you. And I think that's what people have to remember. And especially when they make those comparisons and are constantly grasping for, answers, and who am I, and how do I compare to this girl or this guy that's getting 500 likes on a post and has this many friends, it becomes a popularity contest. And I think that we put too much emphasis and too much, too much emphasis on certain things, on the wrong things. And then ultimately it gets into our minds, and it creeps up on us, and it allows us, it dictates our lives, and it dictates the direction that we go, and it dictates how we feel about ourselves. And I think that's one thing that, I, for so many years, was so consumed in that perception. What are people going to think of me? What are people going to think of my parents? And then ultimately, how am I going to be judged when I go to interview for a job? How am I going to be perceived if people find out that's how my parents died? Well, she could be, that's a character flaw. She could fall into that same addictive behavior. Maybe she's not qualified for this. But those are all the things and the labels that society has put on things. And we have got to remove those labels. We've got to rip those labels off, because I think that having the conversation is the first step in breaking down those walls, and then that call to action, and really doing something about it. And how do we have those conversations and let people know that, that everyone has their own normal, right? Everyone's own normal, and they don't have to become a product of their circumstances, and that they can use their circumstances to shape them and strengthen them. But ultimately they can, decide to make a right turn or a left turn. When they go down that road, they can make a right turn or a left turn. They have decisions that they can make that can ultimately lead them to, the best destination possible. And so I just want to encourage people that, that they can get through those tough times, and that we're all grappling with something, especially now. Things are tough, but I feel optimistic. Light is at the end of the tunnel. And again, embrace yourself, embrace your story. And I always use this saying. It's one of my favorite sayings. Something that I tell people: fall in love with your story. And that's just something that, I encourage people to do every single day when they wake up.
Wow. I tell you, this is an amazing story that and just a lot, as a school counselor, and hearing the other side and thinking how I can utilize how I'm even dealing with my students. Before we get through with this, I want to know, what are your goals for your program? Any more projects in the future?
Yeah, so I actually we just released a documentary, a 20-minute documentary called Beyond the Shadows, and it's my family's journey through addiction, which you can find on my website, laurensisler.com/sidelines. And it's part of a sort of an overreaching effort where we are having, using that as kind of the basis in the story, and then having a conversation. And so February 1st, we did an event, kind of a launch off or a kickoff event, in which we had a conversation, myself and Jim Dunaway, who's with the Jocks Roundtable, sports talk radio show host here in Birmingham, and then Dr. Stephen Taylor, who is with the NBA and NBPA, Player Assistance and Anti-Drug Program. We had a conversation to talk about the problem, talk about addiction, talk about prevention, education, and normalizing it as an illness. It is an illness, and there is help and hope for people out there that are struggling, whether it's addiction, substance use disorder, mental health issues. There's so many different things, but so many different resources out there for people that can get the help that they need. And so the goal is to just have those conversations, have that call to action. So we started that virtual series last week. And so we're hoping to kind of move into different communities to really bring that message to every single, person there, and to, kind of tailor the message for that community and change things up. And so we're hoping to go into Virginia, which is my, home area, and then Washington, D.C., and, hopefully travel around to different parts of the country to do that. So you can go, again, laurensisler.com/sidelines. And then, another long-term goal, I guess short-term and long-term goal of mine, is to build a scholarship fund that I would like to be able to, award to students who, again, might feel they have become a product of their circumstances. Things at home have not been great. They've been struggling with things at home. Maybe a parent or a loved one has lost their life to addiction, or has been incarcerated due to addiction, or various issues like that. And I want to encourage people and inspire people to know that you do not have to become a product of your circumstance. You can open that door and find that pathway to success. You just have to want it, and you just have to trust and believe in yourself, and know that through the fear and through the shame, that you have to have confidence in yourself to move forward, and know that you too can achieve that, and you are absolutely worthy. And so I hope to have that scholarship fund up and running, hopefully in the near future, to help kids, get the education that they want and deserve and need, and move forward with their lives and find a career that gives them purpose in this life.
Such important work. So important. Kim and I always say, to give a purpose to your pain, because otherwise, what's the point? We're going through these hard times, and it's so much better to give a purpose to it. And that's always what we say when we've got hard times, and you've certainly done that.
I love that. Yes. Yeah, you're going to go through hard times. There's no way around it, unfortunately. But if you can, like you said, flip that pain to purpose, you'll open doors that you never thought possible. So again, I just appreciate the opportunity to chat with you ladies, and I've enjoyed it. And, if anyone has questions, I'm on social media, like I said, at Lauren Sisler. So certainly feel free to reach out, share your thoughts, comments, stories. Would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Lauren, so much. We have been inspired, and we have been educated, and I think the work you're doing is so important and it's so needed. No other time do I know of what we've gone through now and what we're seeing more and more of this mental health issues and more of these addictions. And we need help. We as school counselors need real stories and help. And I think your outreach ministry is just amazing. So we appreciate you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
That was amazing. Her story is absolutely amazing. Horrific to think about an 18-year-old going through something like that. To lose both, that's just...
And that is something that stood out to me. She gets the call that her mom had died. Her dad called her. And so she gets on the plane to fly back home. And of course, if something like that happens, then you're wanting the comfort of your other parent. And so the whole way there, she's expecting for her dad to be there, and she's going to, enjoy his hug and the comfort that brings. And she gets there and her dad's not there. That blows my mind, because her dad, in the amount of time from his phone call to her arriving at the airport, he has died too.
And to think that, she could have just moved on with her life, been this famous reporter, that she's chosen to make a ministry and to help other people and outreach and help other people. Because this story is not, this is a very unique story in that she lost both parents within 5 hours. But, there's been so many people that have been touched by this epidemic of pain pills. You just see how this is so accessible to people.
Right.
You see how this is accessible. It's accessible to, we were talking about what is the stereotype, but yet it's people that we don't really, as educators, we need to be looking at everybody. This is happening to educators. This is happening to fellow teachers and to fellow counselors. And
well, and how many times have you sat in a data meeting or something and the teachers have been talking about the parents never check their folder, or like what I was talking about earlier, the child's grades are going from A's and B's to C's, D's, and F's. Yeah. And we have to think, okay, the kids may be on their own. Their parents may be in this addiction of some sort. And, it's not their fault. We have to be aware as educators of how we can help. And, that may be a conversation to have at some other time.
And I think her resources, going to her resources, because I think she would be relatable to a lot of middle school and high school age, because, she's somebody that people look up to and have seen, and I think they would be that she would resonate well. So I think we need to really look at her resources and check those out.
I agree.
So I have part 2 of the transformation. I have been trying to keep up my appearance as I have been in the bunker during this pandemic. And so my mother has been cutting my hair, with her fingers that have the glue that has dried on them, which I know that shows. And then I told you I decided to part the hair down the middle, and I know I look like a water buffalo, but also I decided to do my own eyebrows. And yes, how I have, God's blessed me with some eyebrows, or at least he did before I got a hold of them. And so I did the strips that came in, the NAD strips. And I went way, these are drawn on. I want you to know this is not real. This is drawn on. I have a slither of one hair that is slicked over. That's all I got left. I got carried away. I like to get mine done professionally. You've been there with me when I've done it.
No, I've been there with you when you had them done professionally because you did this before, and it was more of a 911. Please help me get this.
911 right now. I can't even 911, so I'm having to draw them on. So I don't know. I'm just going to have to give it up and just let them grow into the one unibrow that they want so hard to be. But now I have drawn on eyebrows. This is where I've become. This is what I've become.
That girl that did your eyebrows that day, she made you like promise that you wouldn't do this again.
I know, and I think I may have signed a contract, but I just did it. I don't know, the water buffalo new hairdo, it showed off the eyebrows, and so I had to. Yeah.
Oh, well, I want to, first of all, apologize to Lauren because you didn't even do a soft segue into your eyebrows. We went from her touching story, and then you talked all about you. Like you could have done some sort of soft.
I don't know how to connect that. I don't even know how, other than I still feel the pain from the eyebrows from where I've done. So that's my only excuse is I still feel it. It still burns.
Well, let me revisit. You said that you're now parting your hair in the middle. And
yes.
Let me revisit.
Well, I'm trying it.
Because since our last conversation, I did go in and try to look at it myself. And I've realized why this won't work on me.
Why?
Because this may come as a surprise to some people, but I do have to touch my roots up every now and then. And one time, the last 2 times that I've colored my hair, we're getting real right now, okay? The last 2 times, the time before last, I gave myself a widow's peak on accident.
I do remember.
With the hair dye right here.
Yeah.
I gave myself an accidental widow's peak I had to live with for a few weeks.
I called you Elvira, I believe.
I believe that was true. Then this last time, knowing that the widow's peak could happen, I didn't go far down enough, as you can see right here.
Oh, yes.
So if I did the middle part as shown here, I would have to really be careful.
There's going to have to be some colorization.
Well,
is all I'm going to say.
That my eyeshadow palette matches my hair perfectly, and so on the days when I do my back, I do have to use my eyeshadow palette to cover that. But I did realize that that's one reason why maybe I could not do the middle part.
And I see why I shouldn't. I do see, but I don't know. I'm going to try. Okay, good show. Enjoyed Lauren so much.
Well, let's talk about something we have coming up, and that is the toolbox episode. Everything you ever wanted to know about individual counseling, what resources to pull out, when, how to make it easy. I am super duper excited about this upcoming episode. Also, be watching for information about our meet and greet. If you are going to ASCA this summer in Vegas, be watching for information about our meet and greet. We're thrilled to be talking about that. And as always, you can follow us on Instagram. You can like and subscribe and leave a comment about Kim's eyebrows on our on the comments on this episode.
Our water buffalo hairdo.
Or water buffalo hairdo. And you can join our Facebook group on Facebook, Counselor Accents Group, or like our page.
Bye-bye.